Good evening, I'm Nick Schifrin. John Yang is away. Tonight, President Donald Trump is predicting he and Chinese President Xi Jinping will sign a, quote, comprehensive trade deal during Mr. Trump's first visit to Asia since returning to the White House. The high-stakes trip comes as the president faces a constellation of international challenges, from the relationship between the world's two largest economies to trying to end the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. On his way to Asia, President Trump made a pit stop in Doha to greet Qatari leaders who helped broker the Gaza ceasefire.
And you have a safe Middle East right now, and you're going to keep it that way for a long time.
But what lies ahead is perhaps the single most important meeting of his new term with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. President Trump says he's looking to make a trade deal to avoid threatened 157% tariffs. The U.S. wants Beijing to buy more American soybeans. There are also tensions over technology, critical minerals, and Taiwan. But the U.S. will not walk away from Taiwan in pursuit of a Chinese trade deal, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said tonight.
To make concessions to get a deal, are you willing to pause tariffs?
Sure, they have to make concessions. I guess we would too.
The president says he has no plans to repeat his high-profile meetings with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, but that he'd be willing to meet.
He knows I'm coming, and he would, yeah, I'd be open to it 100%. I got along very well with him, Kim Jong-un.
But ongoing wars loom on the president's agenda. This morning in Ukraine, smoke filled a residential neighborhood after an overnight Russian attack. And in Gaza, the Israeli military said it conducted an airstrike against an imminent threat, despite the ceasefire. In southern Gaza, trucks are rolling in as UN agencies are rushing in badly needed aid. Earlier today, I talked with the World Food Programme's country director, Antoine Renard.
2 weeks now since the ceasefire, we've reached now 320,000 people directly with food boxes. We managed also to scale up bread, and we have now 15 bakeries that are fully up and running 22 hours out of 24. It's practically 700,000 people that are getting fresh bread on a daily basis.
The need, of course, has been absolutely massive. The international organization that declares famine has said that there was famine in northern Gaza before the ceasefire. Are you actually able to reach all the people who need this help the most?
Well, the level and the scale of what we've managed to do is not yet sufficient versus what we should actually be doing. When I was mentioning 320,000 people that are getting now food boxes, it's only 20% of what we're supposed to reach on a monthly basis. We've entered 10,000 metric tons of food into Gaza. This is 1/6 of what WFP should bring just to cover staple food for a full month. We manage actually now to reach this population in Gaza City. That is where we need now to go for what used to be in July, 1 meal on average per day. We're already getting to 2 meals. But what we need to gear up is the quality of the meals that are out there. Some of the families I was with, even post this fire, what they were telling me, they just dream of chicken and eggs. But many of these goods, because they are not coming sufficiently into Gaza, they cost a fortune. They can't afford it.
Israel has long argued that Hamas and gangs were stealing food or looting trucks. What are you going to be able to do to prevent that from happening?
Well, we've always flagged that there were no evidence related to any of the humanitarian good that was actually on the ground. When I look at the World Food Programme, the humanitarian distribution systems is actually perhaps the most robust related to get the assistance in Gaza.
And how important is it that this ceasefire holds and turns into a permanent peace?
Well, that one is perhaps the most important. I mean, sitting with people in Gaza City or in Dar el-Baila just, a week and a half ago, I can tell you that one of the main messages that I was getting from the population, one of the family was telling me, we will not anymore be in capacity to survive if we are getting, again, bombs on our head. And I think that now there is, let's say, a sentiment of hope, but we need to be cautious. We owe it to the civilian population that are in Gaza. Now that hostages have been released, the ones that were alive, the fact that you have civilians that have been so dire to get out of 2 years of war, I think the international community owe to the people in Gaza not to face a conflict anymore.
Antoine Renard, Country Director for the World Food Programme, thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Nick.
Tonight, President Trump suggested for the first time that Hamas faced a deadline to hand over the remaining deceased hostages. He wrote on Truth Social, "Let's see what they do over the next 48 hours. I'm watching this very closely."